Welcome to Why I Quit, a show that covers real people quitting their 9-to-5 jobs in search of something different. Listen to inspiring conversations where we dive deep into the stories of why people quit their jobs, what were the hardest parts, where are they now, and any advice for people following the same path. I am so excited to introduce John Balkam as this week's guest on Why I Quit. Listen as John discusses his journey of quitting his job multiple times to start different businesses. Learn how the process of writing a book inspired him to quit his job to start an agency that combines sports, entertainment, and cause marketing. Get inspired listening on how he tied the growth of his business to the growth of his impact on the world. Hey, John, thanks so much for joining me today.
Appreciate it, Dave. Good to be here.
Well, I'm excited to have you on the show and tell your story. So if you don't mind starting out, tell me a little bit about where you're from and your initial education kind of through college.
Sure. So I'm from Bethesda, Maryland, which is just outside of Washington, D.C. And then I went to Georgetown for undergrad business school. And started my career here in D.C. And I definitely identify as a Washingtonian, given that grew up inside the Beltway, went to school here, still live here. It's definitely home. Yeah, building my business here as well.
Tell me a little bit about when you were in college, what was kind of your expectation in terms of, what you wanted your first role to be out of school? And then also on that same vein, did you have any entrepreneurial itches or thoughts at that time as well?
Yeah, no, I did. I came into business school thinking I'm going to go work in sports. I was one of those kids who growing up, I thought I was going to become one of the 30 general managers of a Major League Baseball club. And of course, reality kind of hits you once you get older and you get through school and you realize how high of a hill that is to climb to get one of those jobs. But I did have a deep interest in sports. And then, that kind of dovetailed when I was in school and towards the end of my time at Georgetown. I did get really interested in social entrepreneurship and entrepreneurship in general. I took a class on social entrepreneurship as I was just finishing up at Georgetown. And that was kind of a light bulb moment for me where I felt like, man, this is really cool. People who are looking to serve people in need using business, that just made sense to me. It kind of felt like, why isn't every business tailored that way? A theme for me in my career has been both a keen interest in social entrepreneurship and a really keen interest in sports and entertainment. And, how do I merge those two interests? And I would say after about 10 years, after college, I feel like I've kind of gotten to that point where I've been able to merge those two passions and interests. Of course, just getting started, I took a really crappy job just like everybody else out of college, right? The stuff I was doing was not that interesting. Now, I did work for the Washington Nationals when I was still a student, and it was cool to say I worked for the Nats, but it was very much grunt work, working game days in the hot sun, absolutely no intellectual stimulation, all that good stuff. And I also I had a cool job too, or internship for the Tiger Woods Foundation, working the golf tournament back in 2012, the AT&T National. So I had these cool jobs, and sometimes in sports, the appeal is you get to say you work for these cool organizations that everybody knows, but then the reality is you're working poor hours for little pay, and it's not as glamorous as it's made out to be. So I did a little bit of that. Starting out my career, I also worked at an association, but then I did kind of get into entrepreneurship, and there was no turning back once I got that first taste of entrepreneurship as a young professional.
Was there a specific moment in your initial kind of full-time corporate job when you knew that it was time to go and that you wanted to start your own thing? Or were you trying things on the side just to see like what caught, or, where were you at that time?
Yeah, there was a series of experiences, right? I think there's several moments, not one moment. When I was working at that association in DC, I just started going to these events. So Georgetown has a great Startup Hoyas network or Georgetown Entrepreneurship Network. And I just started to go to their events and just go and show up. Let's say they're having a launch event, a bunch of startups were pitching. I would just show up and I would go meet the entrepreneurs and go talk with them after they presented and hang out and have a drink, right? And once I started to meet these people who had, these missions that they were on, these dreams of, solving some problem or a series of problems, that was very infectious. And it made me want to associate with them and actually go test out entrepreneurship for myself. So that was happening while I was working my boring desk job. And, the allure of an adventure with a startup was too strong. So yeah, right about when I was 24, I quit my first job. I'll tell you about the other job that I quit recently. But when I was 24, I had my first taste of entrepreneurship, and it was basically just a startup with this guy I met through Georgetown Entrepreneurship. We were trying to solve this big problem around measuring impact of philanthropic donations and corporate philanthropy, and trying to tackle what we felt like was a big problem. And so it was not too long before I kind of just got a little bit bored and frustrated with the regular 9 to 5, and I just kind of had that call to the wild, or call of the wild, to go on this adventure. And I would say I realized the ability as a young single person to take big risks was, I had an appetite for that, right? I would hear people talk about, well, now's the time to take the risk. So I actually went out and I took the risk. That first startup I worked on didn't really pay off, other than the experiences, the relationships. Got to go to London for 3 months and live in London for 3 months. So, I mean, absolutely amazing value when it comes to experiences and lessons. The financial side wasn't really there, but I think it set me on the path for later on in my career, and kind of was the initial step that led me to the type of business that I'm building now.
I'd love to dig into that first startup a little bit. Talk to me a little bit about, the reality of trying to grow that startup. What were some of the things that you struggled with, and how did that lead to you deciding to go back to a corporate role after that?
There's no boss, or be your own boss thing. That is a double-edged sword, because hey, you have to get up and do, figure out the important things to work on yourself. Actually, it's kind of a myth, because ultimately when you become an entrepreneur or you start a startup, like, your customers are your new boss, and you actually have several new bosses, right? So it's not like you eliminate any type of authority. It's like, no, you actually take on more responsibility when you start a startup. So I actually think that I probably was like a little bit underprepared or underskilled for my first crack at entrepreneurship. And probably everyone on our team was a little bit underskilled or underprepared for that startup. So when I left that startup, it was about early 2016. I didn't go to like a big corporation, but I did go to a bigger startup, right? I went to a company called EverFi, which was about 200 people when I got there. And it was venture backed, more experienced entrepreneurs leading the charge. So it felt like an opportunity for me to still get a little bit of the taste of the early stage type of company, but not completely rely on, my lack of experience, my teammates' lack of experience, just kind of winging it. Oh no, we actually have structure in place. We have the resources, and we have a clear vision and mission, and we have customers, we have products, right? So that to me was critical. My time at EverFi was amazing, and I spent 3.5 years there. And I got to see the company grow from 200 people to over 500 people. And, a year and a half after I left, just this year, it got acquired. So I got to see what it was like to be a part of a company that was going through the growth stage. And it was invaluable, right? Like, I learned how to be a better professional. I learned how to, I improved my skills, certainly my sales and marketing skills, but also my communication skills. And yeah, I saw what strong leaders in business look like, how they act, how they communicate, and how they keep everyone, on target, on task. And yeah, I take away a lot of the lessons from both my failed startup when I was 24 and the experience at EverFi, those are just, I'm just stacking those lessons up and trying to apply them as I, dive back into the startup world myself.
And so when you went to EverFi, were you burnout on the startup side and you were like, I just need to have like a more stable job and I'm looking to do that, and you thought you were going to be on the corporate side for a while? Or did you look at that as a stepping stone to, I'm going to do this and I'm definitely going to start my own thing again down the road?
Well, funny you asked that, Dave, because when I left my first startup, I was still in that mode of, all right, what's the next thing I'm going to start? Like, all right, maybe it was a failure. Maybe I still don't have any money in the bank, but like, I got to do this. Like, I got to start something. But it was the right decision for me to get a more stable job. The right decision for me to learn from more experienced professionals. That said, it only, and maybe this is just part of my wiring, but it only took, a year and a half, maybe 2 years of a steady job where I started to feel a little bit restless and a little bit like a caged beast and a little bit like, oh, all right, what's my next thing here? Right. Even within a, 250 person company, I was like, I feel like I could be doing more. I feel like I could be pursuing something even more ambitious, which is, it's like, why am I like that? I don't know why I am like that, but it is what it is. And so definitely by my third, fourth year, I was kind of thinking like, okay, what can I do next? I did have a big catalyst during my time at EverFi that kind of shifted me back into the entrepreneurial mindset. And that was, I decided to write a book while I was still full time at EverFi. This was an opportunity that came up again through the Georgetown Entrepreneurship Network. Eric Kester, he is a professor of entrepreneurship at Georgetown, and he's an entrepreneur himself. He started Creator Institute to essentially help create creators. That's his mission. And what he did is he turned a class where he had his students write and publish a book into a business where he helped anybody write and publish a book. And his thesis really is, if you want to advance yourself, if you want to kind of catapult yourself, create a personal brand, launch a business, like the idea is to have a creation event, write and publish a book, start and launch a podcast, but do something that forces you to be entrepreneurial, right? Put your name on it and then put it out there. And while I was at EverFi, still full time, I decided I was going to raise my hand and join Creator Institute to publish a book because it was that outlet to actually let me kind of pursue the next thing, right, and pursue that creative urge that I had while still working a pretty great job. And funny enough, like the signing up and putting my hand up to write the book and publish the book is what led me to quitting my job at EverFi. And we can dig into that. But yeah, it was definitely like, all right, I think I have more in me. I think I can stretch myself more than being a role player. I guess I just wanted to be, the QB, or I wanted to try and be the star player. I don't know what it is about me, Dave, but that just kind of was how I felt and what I wanted to do.
And so tell me about, your process of writing a book in terms of how did you pick the topic? How was it balancing, writing a book, which you've never done before, on top of the full-time job from there, and then kind of transition that into how that led to, when you were ready to quit from there?
Yeah. So I've heard this saying that in order to write a book, you have to become the book first. And the best thing to do is write from what you're experiencing. And what I was definitely experiencing at EverFi while working in their sports and entertainment division was there was a blurring of the line between what we call marketing and cause marketing, right? Or sports and entertainment marketing and cause marketing. And the reason I say that is at EverFi, we were delivering this online youth education on behalf of some of the largest leagues, teams, athletes musicians and celebrity talent. And we were kind of doing this white labeled, impact program or impact activation on behalf of these big entities. And so as I was experiencing this, I was kind of saying to myself, well, why are all these sports leagues, why are all these athletes really interested in youth education all of a sudden? Is it just because of their goodwill, or is it because of something that's driving profits and driving bottom line results for them? And so curiosity is what led me to see what I was observing in the business I was in, and thinking like, oh, is there a bigger story to be told here? Is there a bigger trend here? And I had read all about, being someone who's interested in social entrepreneurship, I had read all about, you know, conscious capitalism, stakeholder capitalism, all this movement towards a more inclusive and or more, conscious capitalism, or a way of doing business, right? More impactful business. So I essentially said, all right, I'm gonna tackle this concept of where sports and entertainment marketing is going, and how cause marketing is starting to blend into sports entertainment marketing. So that's how I came up with the topic. And then, since I was a first time author, I had no idea what I was doing. The group of the cohort I was working with at Creator Institute, and the instruction I was getting at Creator Institute, was super important to actually getting the project done. We had Zooms every single week, and we had a project plan laid out for us. And it was almost like, yeah, I just had to go and execute. I didn't have to do the strategic plan. The folks at Creator Institute would say, all right, here's for 6 weeks, we just want you to write, essentially write a bunch of blog posts. Just get the words on the page. Okay, now that you've done that, you've hit your 10,000 words. Now for 6 weeks, let's build on that. Let's add in some more, let's add in some more research, right? Let's go read books. Let's listen to podcasts, YouTube videos. Let's get our own first person interviews, and let's integrate more research into this. And then, then you have these other milestones that they lay out for you, and you would just have to make sure you would execute. And that would mean, after I get home from work, maybe put in 1, 2, or 3 hours on the book, or certainly on the weekends, put in 2 or 3 hours, make sure I'm continuing to make progress. So it was a balance of, hey, still got to deliver for my 9 to 5, got to deliver for EverFi. I enjoyed it and I love working there, but there was this feeling of like, I could really advance more quickly if I do this book project. If I put my name on it, I could really kind of establish a personal brand for myself while being, a key role player at this growing company.
And what was it during the process of writing the book that was, kind of the light bulb moment into being like, I need to quit and do this now? Was it the process of writing the book itself that led to that? Was it anything else, or how did that transition occur?
It was a little bit of a misalignment of between where I wanted to go and where EverFi was actually going. At the time, they were trying to realign their sales organization. They just felt like I could be better serving EverFi in a different department, right? Whereas I was, I had I had a manuscript for a book about sports entertainment marketing. They were kind of asking me to shift away from that. So I was like, you know what? I've got this book coming out. I really want to stay in this lane. So, thanks for the offer. It's been a great 3.5 years. I'm going to go do my own thing. Right. So that it was one of those things you often hear athletes talking about, which is like, I'm going to bet on myself. Right. So I was like, I'm going to bet on myself. I feel strongly about the thesis of the book at the time. I was like, I have a lot of good evidence here that this is the way sports entertainment marketing is going. Okay, so why don't I help go bring that about? Initially, the idea was, all right, I'm going to have this book coming out. why don't I sell consulting services on top of that? I'll promote the book, try and sell as many copies as I can, but then on top of that, I'll sell workshops, I'll sell speaking engagements. I'll kind of be trying to establish myself as a thought leader for this, what I would call a new generation in sponsorship. That was the initial thought. That is not what I'm doing now, but you can see where my head was at of, all right, well, I know I want to work in sports entertainment. EverFi is asking me to move outside of that industry. I've got this book coming out. You know what? I'm just going to go do my own thing. Right. So the book was called 3-Win Sponsorship. Right. Win, win, win. That's kind of the mindset that I wanted to attach to any different marketing deal in sports. And then I was like, okay, why don't I make a company? I'll call it 3rd Win Group. Right. I'm essentially just going to monetize or double down on this brand, right? And try and create both, try and sell both the book and now create the business around this one basic concept. So that's how it all came together. I mean, it was about 3 years ago. So we're still in business 3 years later. A lot has happened since then, but I feel good about the decision, right? Like I would have had more security. I wouldn't have had to kind of struggle and sacrifice as much, I guess you could say, if I had stuck with EverFi. In fact, you could say like I lost out on a little bit of upside for not staying with EverFi longer because they did eventually get acquired, right? And I could have potentially acquired more shares and maybe gotten a bigger payout. So there's trade-offs to the decision, right? But at the same time, now I'm in a position where, all right, TWG is getting established. I have a business partner. Our client roster is growing, and I'm like, all right, well, what would be more upside? Getting a few more shares of EverFi or being the primary owner of 3rd Win Group. And I need several more years to operate and figure out exactly what the calculus is on that. But I'm feeling pretty good about where we're at right now.
I'm curious in terms of what was the expectation of the first year versus like the reality of how it actually was. So what was that like for you?
Yeah, it was hard. I agree with all the entrepreneurs who say it's hard. I had a couple of contacts that retired former NFL players that I had at EverFi that I contacted and basically offered my services to. And I was thinking, okay, I at least have a couple clients here. I don't have a huge Rolodex. I wasn't coming from exactly the sports entertainment world, but kind of tangential to it. They agreed to start working with me, but of course, in this world, it was very much like prove it, right? We can't really offer you a retainer, but we'll work with you on commission, right? So imagine going from you've got your steady paycheck to, all right, well, now I'm only going to get paid if my client gets paid, and then you have no reputation, no one has ever heard of you, no one's ever heard of TWG, so you're like, wow, this is going to be rough. Of course, I did my best. I tried to work hard to deliver for those first initial clients, but I think combination of me having no reputation and TWG having no reputation, and then the guys I was working with were retired, not active, and there's just not as much of a market unless you're like a retired quarterback. There's not as much of a market for sponsorship for retired athletes. It was rough, and honestly, I did pick up some like contract work for an agency outside of TWG within that first year. And there was a point where I was thinking, well, if it doesn't go well with TWG and I can't, develop traction, I could just, maybe latch on with this other agency, help them grow. And, it was still a bit of a startup agency, but more established, more veteran industry players. So yeah, within the first year, there was a slight chance that I would have shut TWG down and just instead go helped to be a role player for this other agency. As fortune would have it, I then, I was still continuing to promote my book. Recall that, my book came out December 2019. 4 months later, the pandemic hit. So that just kind of that just really changed everything for everyone. So yeah, there was a bit of survival mode. Our initial clients, there's not a lot of traction there. It's hard to get new clients, got to pay the bills, et cetera, et cetera. So there was a lot of scrappy, hey, let me just figure out different work I can pick up, you know, hey, maybe it would be better because of the pandemic to just latch on with this a bit more established agency. But there, a few things happened, right? Kept promoting my book, appeared on as many podcasts as would had me. I actually had a professional athlete hear one of my podcast interviews where I was talking about the book, the principles from the book. He reached out to me saying, I really like the way you think about sponsorship. Like, this is actually exactly what I want to do with my different endorsement deals, my different sponsorship deals. And so after meeting him, his name's Jeremy Casebeer. He's a professional beach volleyball player here in the U.S. After meeting him, I was like, well, all right, I wasn't exactly envisioning myself being an agent or like a marketing agent, but this guy is picking up what I'm putting down in terms of my ideas from the book. So why don't we test it out? So fortunately, like one guy randomly listening to one of my podcast interviews, from across the country, he's from LA. That one guy believing in me led to, me pivoting TWG away from consultancy and into more agency, and having the one client who was an active professional athlete enabled me to then build off of that foundation, right? Then kind of re-envision what TWG could be. Maybe the consulting services that I wanted to sell, maybe we come back to those later, but it was like, okay, the market's telling me that talent is the way to go, so let's go all in on talent. And so Jeremy Casebeer coming on at TWG allowed us to go from that. That was really the end of the first year when he came on as a client. So, think of struggling for over a year, getting almost no traction, thinking about quitting or like shutting down the business. Then all of a sudden, you get this professional athlete reaching out to you saying they really like your ideas. So that was literally the catalyst for TWG being able to build a foundation of talent clients. Now we're up to 7, 8 talent clients. And it was all from that one person, Jeremy, listening to a podcast interview I did. So it is kind of crazy to think about, hey, maybe TWG wouldn't have made it, but at least I didn't give up too soon, right? I kept going. I kept doing what I could to promote my book. And then I got the one person to latch on.
I know you have a big social mission with your company as well. And I'd be curious of how you think about, running and building a profitable and successful business as you think about scaling that with staying aligned with your mission. Talk to me about that balance. Is that difficult to do? And, how do you align your mission to, kind of grow moving forward?
Yeah, it's been a real challenge and something I think about all the time. When you set out to be a quote unquote social enterprise, you really have to think long and hard about like, well, what is actually doing good? What is actually making an impact, right? Sometimes you do have unintended consequences when you're trying to do good. It doesn't turn out how you think it is, right? Or it doesn't turn out how you think it's going to turn out. So I've thought about it. I've gone all the complex routes, and then I've really come back to the simplest route, which is I want to be able to tie the growth of our company with the growth of our impact. And how do we do that? The way that we've done that is we have decided to pursue talent and now brands that have some type of social or environmental mission. And then we've also decided to pledge a percentage of our profits every quarter to donate to effective charities through something called the Giving What We Can pledge. That's a lifelong pledge, or for the lifespan of the business. We are pledging 10% of our profits to give to effective charities through something called the Effective Altruism Movement. The Effective Altruism Movement suggests that the way to attack social problems is to attack the biggest problems that are tractable, which we can potentially solve, and who could use more funding, right? So any additional new dollar to fund these causes it will be worthwhile. There's no diminishing returns, right? They're a little bit more neglected in terms of causes. So more dollars would actually mean more impact. So I'm trying to rely on smarter, expert people in the world of philanthropy to help guide us in actually figuring out stuff that can do good for other people. That was after a long time of thinking like, oh well, we could figure out the nonprofits ourselves and we can tie it into every deal and we can build these win-win deals ourselves. And like to a certain extent, yes, we are finding ways to build in effective charities into our sponsorship deals with our clients and our sponsors. But then ultimately it's like, well, how are we going to measure our impact? It's extremely hard and it's probably not even worth really trying to hone in on like how much how much is this dollar leading to an improvement in somebody's life. It's so subjective that I'm not even sure if it's worth doing. So at least what we're trying to do is say, okay, we're going to work with people who we feel have, good intentions and are trying to do good for their communities, right? That's number one. We're trying to also team up with sponsors who are of the same mindset, right? Trying to operate their businesses in such a way where they're at least doing no harm, but hopefully doing good through their operations of their business. And then three, it's this pledge that we've taken to share our profits with effective charities. And hey, that's I feel like we're doing a pretty good job, and we're not perfect. We're obviously we don't know exactly how effective any of our different partnerships are, but our intentions are good, and I think that's the most important thing. We feel like all right, we are scaling the business. We're growing in terms of our clients. We're growing in terms of our revenues. We're growing in terms of the people who are working on the business, but also we're not forgetting about our initial intention to be a positive contributor to society through our business.
The other side of it as well that we talk with a lot of founders on this show is also the personal side in terms of like work life balance. I know that's something that a lot of people struggle with, especially as you're growing the business and as your own boss. How do you separate kind of like the time from work, which you're so like invested in and devoted to, from making sure you have time to turn off. So how do you think about that side of it?
Yeah, I kind of realized the first year or two of starting TWG that actually like me sitting down in front of my laptop does not equate to results for the business. You know, everyone like everyone else, I was accustomed to just being in an office for a certain amount of time every day. Forget about whether I was productive or not. Like it was just important that I put in the hours. What I kind of realized, and I guess this is something that a lot of people are realizing from working from home, is that you probably only have about 3 or 4 good, like intellectually stimulating hours in any given day, right? Like after a certain point, the law of diminishing returns kicks in, and like you just don't have it anymore. You've been staring at your screen too long. You've been writing too many emails. You've been creating too many social media posts, and then your brain just kind of gives up. So I started taking the pressure of myself to like be in my seat in front of my laptop a certain amount of time, and more so just try to be really honed in on like, okay, what am I going to spend my good hours on? Right. I know I have to sleep well. I know I have to eat well. I know I have to exercise. So I'm going to build those into my schedule. But I also realize like I don't have like 12 hours of good work in me every day. I probably have like 4. And I'll be available maybe to my clients any time of the day, like most entrepreneurs, but I'm not going to force myself to sit in front of my laptop for 12 hours, right? I just kind of realized I wasn't getting a lot out of those extra hours. So part of it was I'm just trying to be consistent and show up and make a little bit of progress every day, not try and go build a unicorn in a year, which nobody can do, right? No, I'm actually just I'm in this for the long haul. I just want to move the ball down the field a little bit every day. And I also love, I don't know if you know Derek Sivers. He's an entrepreneur and author. He wrote a book called Anything You Want. And kind of the mindset that he likes to abide by is if you're going to build a business, build it so that you create a world that you enjoy living in, right? Don't build it so that you're killing yourself and you hate all the hours that you have to put in and you hate the fact that your health is deteriorating. No, you can, when you build a business, you can create your world however you want it. The internal dialogue I had was, well, do I want to kill myself, to go and try and build the next creative artist agency, which is like the biggest agency in the world? Or do I want to build a solid business where I can also have good health, have good relationships, have some free time, have the ability to take a vacation? And I just felt like, yeah, that's it for me. The latter is what I want. I don't feel the need to try and be one of those entrepreneurs who's in, all of the magazines and who's being featured on Entrepreneur and, Forbes 30 under 30. I don't really care about all that stuff. I realize like I want to have autonomy. I want to have good health. I want to have good relationships. Oh, and I want to build a sustainable business. And I think that a lot of those insights have served me well because, like, I haven't exactly, been like that person who's like on all the 30 under 30 lists and like the new big star in sports entertainment, but I'm still here. I'm still growing. I'm enjoying myself. I'm not killing myself. So that's how I'm thinking about it is like, why build a business where you're gonna hate the world that you've created, right? Like I think a lot of entrepreneurs should think about how do they want their ideal day to go. Like if you could schedule every minute of your day, how would you schedule it? And like literally you can go and build that. You don't need to be, on 12 to 16 hours every day. You can be on for 4 to 6 hours every day and still build a really solid business. I feel very strongly about this, Dave. Like, I actually am anti hustle culture, if you can tell. I think there is a lot of strength in being like gradual growth, not blitz scaling. Maybe that works for some. I think gradual growth, being in it for the long haul, realizing that it takes 10 to 15 years to build a sustainable business. And if you realize that's true, all right, orient yourself so that you can exist, you can stay in it, you can be a strong player for all 10 or 15 years, and you can be consistent for all 10 or 15 years.
I couldn't agree more. Phil and I are definitely like very like anti-hustle culture as well. And I think like, we talk about this all the time of like, how do we build a company that we want to work for? And I think something that we, realize about ourselves is like how much is ingrained to us from education about like just the 9 to 5 concept, and how like, even when you build a business without even realizing it, you're building in a lot of things that you hate, or you feel like you have to do it, versus like, you don't have to, like you can create your own schedule. So I couldn't resonate with that anymore.
Well, let me put it to you this way, Dave. Is it true that you always do your best work when you're in your normal working hours? Or do you sometimes get great ideas like in the middle of the night or like in the shower or walking down the street? It is a funny thing about creativity where if you let yourself breathe, you give your mind some time to think, suddenly things will just start coming to you and like you'll have great ideas when you're least expecting it. So like in a way, I feel like I have an advantage by not killing myself, 12 hours every day. I actually give myself time to think, give myself time to like project out like, okay, where do we need to go? And then all of a sudden, like I feel like my strategy improves and my performance improves and I'm not like a slave to my desk every day. So man, I'm glad we have taken this bad experience of the pandemic, and a lot of people have realized like when you're in an information or knowledge style economy, there's no correlation necessarily between the number of hours that you're online and the amount of output or the quality of output that you're getting.
Yeah, to end this, I always ask the same question to every guest. And I try to focus on like a 3 to 5 year window of like, it's kind of like this mid range of, what are you most excited about over the next 3 to 5 years?
I think I'm most excited about seeing everybody who's come into our network, our community at TWG winning. Like I want to see everybody who touches my business winning however they define it. right? Revenue wise, impact wise, personal growth wise, relationship wise. Like, I think as an agency, and now I'm thinking about it as in terms of like a founder of like an internet based business, you know, I'm defining success primarily by how much success everyone around me is having, right? Is my business partner, having success? Are all of my clients getting where they want to go? Are all of the associates we're bringing in, learning, growing, building confidence, experiencing what it means to be a strong professional because we're working with young people? Are all of our advisors that I've brought on, are they getting a great experience out of, being associated with TWG? And then ultimately, like, is the work that we're doing, or, the profit sharing that we're giving it to charity, like, is that leading to wins? And like, this is like like how I view the world, or how I view the business world, which is like the most fulfilling thing is the value and the service you can provide to others, not like all of the accolades and all of the money. It's like, man, this is really cool getting to see everyone around me essentially winning, having success, feeling good, and you can be a part of that. That's extremely exciting, extremely gratifying as well.
Awesome. I love it. Well, that was a perfect way to end it. Definitely appreciate you telling your story. I'm, super inspired listening to you and excited to see where you take the business next.
So appreciate you, Dave. Thanks for the invite, man. And hope everybody enjoyed the episode.
Thank you for listening. It really means a lot to us. We want to hear from you as we keep growing. Please reach out on whyquit.co if you have any feedback or potential guests. A special thanks to Chris Dole for the music. Please check out his newest album, Here's to You, on Spotify. Thank you, and we will be back next week with another episode.